In this video I'm going to show you how you can prove that this surface, the limit of this surface, does not exist as x and y approaches 1 and -1. So that's when x equals 1, that's along here, and y equals -1, that's along here. So as you approach this point here, the limit does not exist. So we're going to try and prove this. Okay, so the first step is to consider along x equals 1. So consider x equals 1. So consider this plane here. So imagine you've got a vertical sheet of paper. Where the surface intersects with this vertical sheet of paper, it will give you this equation. Well, it will give you this. So along x equals 1, you would put this into the x, so this thing here would be y. You got 1 here, and then this thing here would be 1 squared would be 1. So this whole thing here will then become this for this particular plane here, for this along this line here, along this plane here. Okay, so that would then take us to here. Now the minute you can spot this difference of 2 squares, so immediately jump to this, and then you can see that these two will cancel each other out. That will then give you this, and then as y approaches -1, so this whole thing here will be positive a half. So along x equals 1, the limit is positive a half. Now consider y equals -1. So now consider y equals -1. So along this plane here. So imagine you've got a vertical sheet of paper here. Where this surface intersects with this vertical sheet of paper, it will be this. Hang on. So put -1 into the y and into the y here. So this thing here represents where the vertical sheet of paper intersects with the surface. So now difference of 2 squares. So rewrite it as this. But then you can see that. Hang on. You can see that this looks very similar to this. So let's factor out the -1. So this thing here will then become this thing here. So now these two will cancel each other out, leaving you with this. So now as x heads towards +1, so this will be -1/2. So this will be -1/2. So what that means is along y equals -1, along y equals -1. So you've got your vertical sheet of paper here. The limit is -1/2 along x equals 1. So you've got your vertical sheet of paper here. Along x equals 1, the limit is +1/2. So these two are different. So therefore, you can conclude that the limit does not exist. Because in order for the limit to exist, no matter how you approach this point here, it should head towards the same elevation or the same height or the same z value. Here the z value is -1/2, here is +1/2. Therefore you can conclude that the limit does not exist. Okay.